Support for Donnybrook is provided in part by Design Air Heating and Cooling.
Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you for joining us for Donnybrook as we begin our 39th year here at PBS. Can you believe it? Thank you so much for your support. Lots to talk about as usual this week, but first, let's meet the panelists. Wendy Weiss has taken the week off, and we thank Joe Holleman from the Post-Dispatch for sitting in. Also from the Post and STLtoday.com, Mr. Bill McClellan. From St. Louis Magazine, we welcome Sarah Fenske and Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American. That is pretty incredible. 39 years. Congratulations, Bill. You're one of the longest-serving broadcasters in St. Louis history. That's cool.
Well, I know we're talking about steamboats tonight, and when I started on this show, they were still coming up and down the river.
Yeah, that's how you got to work. Alvin, late breaking news today. It looks like Governor Parson has prevailed in court because a Missouri Court of Appeals has ruled unanimously that he can choose the next prosecuting attorney for St. Louis County. As you know, the county executive, Dr. Sam Page, thought that he had that privilege, but the courts now twice have ruled in the governor's favor. So it looks like Melissa Price Smith is going to be the next prosecuting attorney. But if you're a member of the county council, aren't you kind of a loser in this case? Because they had that power to decide also whether the county executive's pick was going to go through, and now apparently they don't.
Every citizen in St. Louis County should be a little bit upset about this. Their right has been stripped by the governor, and it's action that he took that he decided not to do in St. Charles. He's playing favorites. Obviously, they vote for him in St. Charles County, and they didn't vote for him in St. Louis County. Take all the names and faces out of other than Governor Parson. But, you know, there's going to be another county executive one day, and there's going to be another county council one day, and they'll look back and say, anybody celebrating this, you're celebrating a loss of your rights. So this is bad all the way around. I hope the state Supreme Court, as we're speaking right now, is taking some action to at least make some ruling. If they rule in favor of the governor, so be it, but I still disagree with it.
Well, you're looking at the big picture, Alvin. If you take a look at the smaller picture, Melissa Price Smith is a great choice. And you got to give Parson credit. He made a terrific choice, as he did with Gabe Gore in the city. So,
and I'm going to take exception to say the rights being stripped. We've had two courts saying, here's what the law says. So to say your rights are being stripped, what you're saying is that two levels of judgeships have misinterpreted the law. I don't see that as being quite you've been stripped of your rights.
Well,
we've had judges say, no, this is the way it should be. As far as the county council, the loser here is Sam Page. I think the county council, in fact, Sam Page was going to argue when he said Court Van Ostren that he really didn't need the approval of the county council, would just go ahead and appoint him as acting anyway. So I think the person who lost here was Sam Page, and the person who won was Mike Parson. And I don't think you can take the names and the faces out of it, because the names and the faces were, the whole list had three people who were veteran prosecutors of the St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney's Office: Melissa Smith, Danielle Smith, and Chelsea Frazier, and a fourth one who was added, and that's the one Sam Page picked. So the person with the least experience, the least familiarity with the county prosecuting attorney's office, was the one that the county executive picked. So I think you could make the argument that it worked out okay.
I'm going to agree with Joe on one thing, and one thing only, Joe, and that is that I have a feeling that the county council is very much celebrating this decision. They don't feel that their rights were stripped. However, I think Alvin made a great point in that historically, every time a new county prosecuting attorney has had to be chosen throughout the state of Missouri, every time that has happened up to this point, it has been up to the person who's the county executive of that county. That has now changed. And so a right that the citizens had to have their choice being made a little bit closer to home by somebody that they ultimately voted for, that has gone away. And I think while they're celebrating now, the precedent here isn't great. Mike Parson has shown that he's good at making these kind of appointments. If this was like Eric Greitens who'd been making these appointments, would we be as happy with how all this is turning out? We could get another governor like that again in short order in Missouri.
Well, the problem started when Andrew Bailey sued. Maybe he, the Attorney General, was the first guy to actually read the law. Maybe no one in the county actually read the state law.
I will say, yes, Charlie,
Why? The law didn't change.
No, Charlie, I interview lawyers for a monthly show on St. Louis Public Radio.
Are you trying to establish your credibility?
I'm going to establish my credibility.
We call that cha-ching, right?
I've talked to 12 different
My opinion
lawyers.
counts more than yours. Go ahead.
I've talked to 12 different lawyers about this over the course of covering that for this show, and 6 of them fell on one side, 6 fell on the other. They can tell you it all comes down to this word, what the definition of this is. The law was very unclear.
I think that's exactly right, and maybe no one read it.
And I think there needs to be a clarification. The state never did give up its right to appoint prosecuting attorneys throughout Missouri. It was only the exception was for counties that had their own charter, and that's very few in the state of Missouri.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on because we have a lot of topics. Only a half hour for this show, so we'll move on to turnstiles. Sarah Fenske. There's now a secure platform program that's being implemented on Metrolink, which first started running in our region in 1994. Well, here we are in 2025, and they have put turnstiles up for the Cortex station on the Missouri side, and as Alvin has reported, and his newspaper has reported, 4 stations on the Illinois side. But the turnstiles aren't quite up to par yet, so there's going to be human beings standing there looking at tickets for about a year or so. Leaders had been telling us for 30 years that these turnstiles and these gates weren't necessary. Then they changed course, probably in response to crime. Are the turnstiles really going to reduce crime, or are they kind of window dressing?
Yeah, to me, this is window dressing. I wonder if they could have had the same impact if they would just have that person who's now going to be standing there at each of these stations for the next year having to swipe someone through because the cards don't line up properly with the gates yet. If they had just had that person standing there being the eyes and ears, not being on their phone paying attention, we might have had the same impact. I think putting up these gates, we've kind of added this costly measure where instead of being able to move people around to the hot spots or the trouble, we've put something in that might make people who want to take the Metrolink in for a Cardinals game, they might feel better about it. But you talk to people who are riding this day in, day out, they're like, this isn't what we need.
I mean, in Washington, D.C., I got there in the mid-'90s, and that was just part of it. You had to have the card, and you had to put it in there for the thing to open, and there was never any mayhem whatsoever. And this is a major metropolitan city, and I just don't know why on earth it would take 30 years for them to finally wise up and do what they should have done from day one. The first train should not have run with you able to just walk off the street and get on the train.
I agree the DC system is incredible. It feels safe even very late at night. But in New York City, they've had the sort of, you have to cross through this turnstile that is very hard to get through. And they have had several prominent incidents just in the last couple of weeks of people being thrown in front of these things, people being set on fire. People who are going to do mayhem find a way to do mayhem.
I think that I like the turnstile idea, but the very safest way to have the best place for safety is if you have a officer in every train going from car to car, just looking around. That makes people feel safer.
And let's do that too.
Right,
but
I
the
agree.
first thing is first of all, let's try to keep the violence from getting on the train, and that'll reduce some of that. Then what's left that got on the train, maybe have the people there too.
I will agree with Alvin. Why did it take 30 years? But I don't think it's ever too late to have a good idea. And this was a good idea 30 years ago. It's a good idea now.
All right. Joe, let me ask you about drivers who drive their automobiles and text at the same time. As of the first of this year, you can get a $150 fine in Missouri if you're texting or actually even talking on the phone while driving. the law says that you can do so in an emergency. Let's say you're calling 911, or if you're stopped at a red light. Police officers right now are not really pulling people over for speeding, as far as I can see, or driving without license plates, or when people litter or jaywalk. I don't see those laws being enforced. Do you see this law being enforced?
No. I don't see how it can be. I think it's a great idea, theoretically, because every statistic I've seen, every study I've seen has shown that the more texting that goes on, the more accidents there are. So we can talk about we want it to be safe on roads. That means you have to do something. How they're going to enforce it is what I'd like to know more about. But I think all those things are good ideas. You know, not using turn signals, all those things you learned in driver's education to make driving safer. And we all forget about them, and we drive too fast. I think those little laws in the last 10 years, let's say, just to take an arbitrary number, have been ignored, and I think much to our detriment. A lot of these little things got ignored, and they end up creating bigger problems. And they create accidents, period.
I like the education campaign they've been doing around this. Every time I'm on the highway now, I see like a sign telling me that as of yesterday, it's illegal to be texting while I'm driving. And I will be honest here, that is a reminder that I needed. And I think this is a chance to sort of correct some bad habits that have crept in my 10 lawless years of living in St. Louis. And I hope it'll have the same impact for other people, even if they're not out there pulling people over.
Well, maybe it's dangerous as well, Sarah, to be looking at those billboards and thinking, wow, that's a good point. You know, I mean, our attention, of course, should be on the road. I'm like Joe. I can't imagine this being enforced. I mean, when you drive down Del Mar or Skinker and cars are running red lights and going 65, I mean, they're going too fast for the policeman to notice that they're texting.
Right.
There's some reason I think that this was enacted, and thus that I guess there are a lot more reports of people texting and being in accidents, and I don't know if they go back and say like you were, go back to the timeline to AT&T or whoever your carrier is and say like you were texting when you crashed into the back of that car or something like that. So if the impetus is, like you said, we know for a fact that this is causing a lot of accidents, you have to take some steps, so I applaud it. Kirkwood did this about 5 years ago. I have no idea if anybody ever got a real ticket or not, but there are signs, and I think it probably did reduce the people who were texting while they were driving. Real quick, my daughters went off on me. It was not texting, but just in the car, and this is when I taught them how to drive, where I'm holding on while they, like they're learning. But boy, when I would do something on the phone, they dad stop. So they kind of taught me. So
well, that's true. My wife Beth corrects me if I'm using the phone while driving, whatever. But with tinted windows, not that I have them, I don't know how any police officer is going to be able to see in about 25 or 30% of automobiles. And the law says that you can't pull someone over simply because they're texting and driving. So if texting and driving is really that dangerous, why can't the police officer pull someone over if he or she happens to see someone?
Well, they did the same thing
texting?
with seatbelts. I mean, you could not be pulled over just for not having a seatbelt, but if you got pulled over for some other reason, that could be an additional ticket to it. And I think the thing is we're looking here for the perfect solution, and there'll never be any highway fatalities, and that's just never going to happen. But like the old speed traps, every time I got caught in a speed trap, it slowed me down for a few weeks. I watched my speed limit, and probably so did everybody else. And I knew which highways had speed traps on them, and I would go slower. So if it knocks off 10, 15, 20% of accidents and saves 10 lives, 20 lives, seems like it's well worth it.
Right, I never thought I'd be nostalgic about the old speed traps. But, now when I see people zipping around, I think, oh, the old speed trap.
I kind of feel,
I call her. I miss her.
I call her the British lady with the GPS is on. I don't use it just around town, but I'm on the highway, whatever. And she comes on and said, there is a speed trap ahead. And I feel like, you really shouldn't be telling me that. Thank you, but I feel bad. Right?
Well, it slowed you down.
It does.
So it works.
It seems to me it's going to be another law that's on the book. Sounds good. Might make some politician feel good. I don't know if it's going to be enforced. Bill, I feel the same way about a law in Illinois, which I think, in Illinois right now, we have businesses moving out. Actually, last year, for the first time in 11 years, the population increased in Illinois in some measure because the Texas governor and the Florida governor were sending boats and buses full of migrants to places like Chicago.
Boats?
Oh, buses. Thank you for the
I have to
correction.
say my geography. I grew up there.
But, yes, so actually Illinois' population went up 125,000 in 2024, which is a pretty big jump considering it's been going down, 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 down. Businesses have been leaving. The state's got huge problems, $144 billion, unfunded pension liability, blah, blah, blah. And so now the lawmakers there have decided to do a couple of things, including they say that if you're getting a subscription with an introductory rate, it could be to Netflix or the newspaper, the company selling you that subscription has to notify you a couple of days before by email that your introductory rate is going to expire. Do you think that this state should be putting more regulations like that on Illinois businesses?
I might move to Illinois again, just for that.
Yeah.
I mean, Charlie, I'll tell you what. I try to watch, Netflix or Hulu or some of those things, and oh, that looks like a good one, but we don't subscribe to that service. And there'll be introductory offer, $1.99 a month for the first 3 months, and then $12.99. And I think I'm afraid to do it because once I get on, I don't think I'll know how to get off. Now, if the government was finally looking out for people like me and saying, Mr. McClellan, after your 2 months of $1.99, they're going to have to notify you and a way to get out of it. And by then I'll be done with the series that I wanted to watch. I think it's a great idea.
I'm with Bill 100%. Couldn't have said it better. I mean, finally, a government actually doing something that helps the citizens go, oh, yeah, that's right. And if I want that subscription, I can go ahead and renew it at the regular rate. It's not like they're kicking me out.
It's just like the paper. If people subscribe to the paper, they might think, hey, I like this. I like getting a paper. So I think what Illinois is doing is smart, Charlie.
Of course, you could always get out your monthly planner and say, okay, I've got a 6-month subscription at 99 cents a month, and in 6 months, I've got to notify the Post-Dispatch or Netflix that the subscription is ending. I just think that these lawmakers in Springfield, like another one, they decided this year to ban shampoo in small plastic bottles in hotels, as if Illinois knows anything about business. They decided to tell business operators how to operate their businesses. Now, they didn't eliminate plastic bottles for Coca-Cola or Pepsi or many other products, but the little shampoo bottles at the Hyatt or the Four Seasons or wherever you stay, Drury Hotel, they're going to be banned.
You were taking those things in bulk, weren't you?
Yeah. That's exactly
my whole shelf is lined with them.
Well, that's the thing. I don't travel a lot, but I do enough. Most hotels have already done that. They already gave up the little bottles because everybody just takes them.
Honestly, I don't care. They can remove every bottle of shampoo off every store.
My point is these lawmakers in Springfield can't run their own state. And so as a result, they're telling businesses who are fleeing to Florida and Texas.
They're not.
And
They're not fleeing because they have to. No,
Caterpillar, Boeing. Let's name up.
Charlie,
but that doesn't have anything to do with like a
Small
introductory subscription. You get I bought an introductory.
It adds up.
tractor.
It adds up, Alvin. Do you want to be a state that is friendly to business, or do you want to one by one give them reasons to leave?
Wait, didn't you just say that more people were living in Illinois
because of migration?
Yeah, okay. No, because the people from St. Louis probably getting out of here.
No, I don't think
that's true. I don't think that's true.
Missouri's population is increasing.
Charlie, I just want to say, I think this is a very lonely crusade on your part. I think all of us who can't be bothered to write things down in our daily planner, we welcome this new law. There's a lot of things that Illinois is up to that I think we can all be hostile about. I don't know that you're going to get many votes on this one.
I'm not running for office.
But
I can be honest.
Clearly.
But overall, Charlie, I applaud your reducing the amount of government regulations. I think that's a great idea, and I'm glad to see you're on board.
Except for this one measure.
Well, I would go along with staying out of that, too, if they would get out of 15 other things.
Right.
Well, Bill, let me ask you also about your past. You mentioned the Steamboat earlier. We're going to talk about St. Charles, which might spend $10 million or so to bring the Arabia Steamboat and its contents to St. Louis. Actually, to St. Charles' downtown. The Arabia was a steamboat that sunk in September of 1856. It had 200,000 pounds of cargo. A lot of it was salvaged in the 1980s, and for 30 years it's been a museum in Kansas City. So now there is some talk about maybe in 2026 bring that as a tourist attraction. Do you think that people are going to line up to see a steamboat in 2026?
Well, I don't think when you're getting an attraction for your riverfront, you're necessarily thinking that each one is going to be a spectacular thing. The word we like to use in St. Louis is transformation. I mean, you know, these things are incremental. And so yes, something like this could be something that if people are on the riverfront in St. Charles, hey, let's go see the Steamboat exhibit. I mean, they're not going to be flocking here from around the nation to see it, but it's just an added little attraction in St. Charles. So if they want to do it, I think good for them. It's a nice idea.
And I think there's another one that sank somewhere close to there, and they might dredge it up. So we could be like the little steamboat capital of the Midwest anyway. At the same time, $10 million, I don't know. Would it ever pay for itself? And along those lines, and could you get it from there to here without it, suffering in some way?
Well, I think they passed on the $10 million because they had tried to get this before, and the asking price was $10 million, and the people from St. Charles said that's too much. To me, a whole bunch of this has to do with how much do they end up paying for it, But I agree with Bill again. This guy, no wonder he's been on for 39 years.
Well,
right.
And with the other word is synergy. It creates a synergy.
Are you forgetting we had the Dog Museum, which Gene McNary brought here, the Santa Maria, which A.J. Cervantes brought
But
here.
that didn't.
We
it
had
got
the Bowling
damaged.
Hall of Fame,
It got damaged
and
in
none
the
of them
storm.
went over that well.
No, Santa Maria was visited. It got damaged in a storm. It got messed up, But people went to the Santa. We went. Yeah.
Well, you might have been the only one, Alvin. It was considered, what's the word, white elephant back in the day.
Oh, okay. Maybe I was too young.
No, but
to
I mean,
remember that.
at least they're trying, right? I mean,
No.
again, it depends
it's one
on
thing
price.
if you're trying with your own money, but if you're an elected official using taxpayers' dollars, shouldn't you ask yourself, if this is such a good deal, why isn't some private
Well, wait a
investor-
minute,
Well, I have a feeling the good taxpayers of St. Charles will not have any hesitation to let those folks out there know whether or not they think they should spend that money. But first, we got to get a price tag on it.
All right. Sarah, let me ask you about investment. The Wheelhouse is a private bar in downtown St. Louis, and it was the scene of a shooting at 3 a.m. on the 1st of this month. A off-duty police officer working extra detail as a security guy at the Wheelhouse on Spruce shot and killed a fella who had pulled out a firearm after there was a big fight outside. Immediately, the Citizens for a Greater Downtown St. Louis, citizens group, mostly of downtown residents, said, we should not have these late-night clubs in downtown St. Louis. Do you agree with them?
I disagree. I respect that group. I like Les Sturman, who is running it. I feel like they have been a good voice on a lot of issues. But downtown is the perfect kind of place for nightlife. People come downtown because they want that excitement. They want that vibrancy. They want things that don't close at 10 a.m. And the Wheelhouse has done a good job of kind of navigating this post-pandemic landscape where a lot of places have struggled downtown. I'd hate to see that go away. They're also in a location that seems almost perfect for nightlife. They're flush, like almost up against the highway and a baseball stadium. If that's not a place for a nightclub, I don't know where is.
I don't think the problem was the hours. And I agree with Sarah on this. I'm all for neighborhoods being able to control what's around them and how late they get to stay open. But I have to say downtown is an exception. Downtowns were not created to be residents first and then businesses. They've always been a business center. It's one thing to have it down in a business center as opposed to having it out in some suburb or what have you. That's a whole different animal.
Joe, I'd kind of disagree.
Animal.
The whole goal of civic leaders for the past 35 years, since I've been here, is to increase the residents in downtown St. Louis. And if there was a nightclub operating until 3 in the morning with gunshots outside of it, you might be among the very first.
Nobody wants gunshots out of it, but the point is that downtown is a place for late night, and part of the joy of living downtown, if you want to live downtown, is there's things going on all the time. The idea that we're going to make this a quiet little neighborhood. That doesn't
We
work.
haven't been able to control it. This is not places like Nashville. Nashville is safe, but we have very loose gun laws and people who are pulling out guns at the drop of a hat in downtown St. Louis.
I got a feeling Tennessee's got loose gun laws.
No, they do.
Well,
Somebody got
Memphis-
killed on Broadway.
Well, but Nashville has its act together.
Yeah,
they have
they
police
have their act
officers
together
throughout.
in New Orleans too. What happened there the other night?
I wouldn't say that New Orleans has its act together,
All right. But can
some places
I
do.
borrow a line from you, Steamboat Willie?
Yes, sir.
If you cannot move next to the airport and complain about the noise.
Thank you.
And we just found out today, with a minute to go, that KSDK is moving out. How many businesses and residents are going to move out of downtown St. Louis before the four of you realize that this can't go on?
I don't think KSDK moved out because there happened to be a shooting in the early hours of the morning. That's not the issue here. That could have happened anywhere, and I bet if we looked up what had happened in Nashville, one has happened in Nashville in recent weeks.
It's not the only shooting. For 10 years, citizens for greater downtown St. Louis have been asking for no late night clubs.
Well, what do you want downtown?
Investment.
People. All you want is just
People.
some people. And you want affluent people sitting around saying, I'm an affluent person. Oh, that's going to say
Going to bed by midnight.
no homeless.
Yeah.
And like, man, can the Cardinal game start at 3 o'clock like in the old days? Yeah, come on.
You talked about some of the problems. The problem's crime, but it's not
No
the
extra
bars.
inmates.
3 a.m. that causes the crime.
All right.
It's the people that
I'm
cause
afraid
the
because
crime.
of time, your comment's going to have to be the last one, Joe. Let's go to the old mailbag. I was surprised by the opinions regarding President Biden's decision to commute the federal death penalty sentences. Those saying either commute all of them or none of them. I think you're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. That from Beth Jung of South County. We also heard from Holly Wrights, who wrote, "Please stop talking over one another. No one can hear or understand when all of you are talking at the same time." Thank you, Holly. You can write us care of 9PBS 3655 Olive Street 63108. Do send those emails, Donnybrook@9pbs.org. On social media, use hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Call the 9 line, please, 314-512-9094, and listen to us on your favorite podcast source. Don't forget, on the 9PBS YouTube channel, we have Last Call. And this week, we give out our awards for the St. Louis Person of the Year. We'll go around the horn and see what our panelists have to say. That's it for this week's program. Thank you for joining us for the first of 52 or so shows in our 39th season. See you next week.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.